Hey, it's Allie Edwards and welcome to December Daily for 2022. Today I'm working on story number 5 in my album. Story number 4 was about Sunday morning, included a full page photo, and then I created a cute little shaker here with the half circle page. Next up in my album from my foundation pages, I have a pattern paper that was from our Numbers scrapbook kit. I also have this number 5 that was from the Numbers scrapbook kit too. And what I'm thinking about doing with this one is I think I'm going to add in a photo over here. So this will be a full page, half page photo. And then I'm thinking that I might cut this out and then put a transparency in here or a piece of pattern vellum or something like that that the 5 will sit on top of, which will make it see-through to this page right here. And then potentially putting something along the edge is what I am considering here for my story number 5. The story, let me count the ways. I think what I'm going to do today is just document what are some of the things that I am loving so far in this season. So first thing for me, I thought of a couple different ideas here. One is you could print on vellum. If you didn't have any printed vellum, you could print on transparency, but I want to look in my stash and see what I have available to me. I don't think that I have any remaining vellum or transparency that was included in our combo pack this year. I'm going to check that too. If I have any of that, I'll try to use that, but otherwise I'm going to look in my stash and see what jumps out. So one of the things that I like to do in this project is experiment a little bit too. Sometimes that is a really fun piece of the process for me. So I do have one transparency here that might work. I was going to see if I had any of the other ones that might work in the half circle. I'm kind of trying to decide if that is the kind of thing I want on there. I actually need to figure out what my photo over there is going to be first. But I also wanted to try what happens if I do texture paste with a stencil on a transparency. I was going to try this Santa and let's just see. I want to see what happens. All right, so I've got my craft mat down on the table and then I got out a sheet of transparency. This transparency that I'm using is one that is supposed to be heat resistant and you can put permanent ink on it. It's a more artsy kind. It's not like an inkjet transparency, and I'll put a link for you guys below in the description. This is one that Morgan recommended recently or within the last year or so, and then I ordered it to test it out too. What I'm doing on top of the stencil, this is texture paste. So this is a very thick paste. You can mix it with other colors if you want it to be a color. I did that with black actually in one of the projects in prep day. If you joined us for that, on top of the stockings, I mixed the texture paste with black. This mainly I just wanted to see what was going to happen. What would happen if I did this? And it seemed to work pretty well. I definitely went over it a few times because when you scrape over the top of it, you can, sometimes you're like scooping it up, and I wanted to make it as even as possible over the top, so I'm just kind of going back around there. And then at the end, I am pulling off the washi tape that's holding it down to pull back up the stencil and then just kind of looking at it before I moved on to the next piece of the process. All right, so while I am waiting for the texture paste to dry on there, I printed out 2 options of my photos. I printed a black and white version and a color version. I ended up going with the color version. Again, that is sized a little bit. I think I ended up sizing that like 5x9 is what ended up. I knew it was going to be bigger, but I wanted to have some flexibility and room in order to trim it around there and kind of move things around if I needed to as well. I'm just using some Fiskars scissors to cut along the outside edge. I use my trimmer to cut the long straight edge there. I think either the black or the white would have, or the color would have been fine. Ended up that I liked the color. Sometimes it's hard with the, like, we have a lot of orange, kind of the yellowy orange wood in our house, and sometimes that can be hard with the photographing. The other thing I'm doing right here is I'm also using my scissors to cut out the border from that other half circle, and I'm actually going to end up printing out one of the digital versions of this half circle too, to be able to back have the black border on the back as well. To do that, I just opened the digital file. You can just open the digital file and print it out essentially, or you can cut something custom for yourself. Next up, I am moving to the journaling portion. I am adding the alpha stamps that we released with this collection, with the December Daily collection this year. I'm adding the word loving on there, which will be my jumping off point for my storytelling today. Sometimes you guys have seen me where I do individual stamping. For ones like this, I like to do it all at once if I can. And so I'm going to test it out first here. I'm getting all of those individual letters onto the stamp block there. And you can see that I just use my scissors to cut a little bit off of the G. So sometimes with these stamps, they have almost like too much around the outside edge of them. So don't be afraid to be the boss of your supplies and cut them off. It's not like in this case, you still want to leave a little bit of it on there, obviously, so that it adheres to your stamp block. But in this case, I was able to make the letters a little bit closer together, which is something that I personally like the look of. I don't mind if it's messy or if it's not, totally in a complete straight line. I actually don't care about that as much as I care about I'm wanting them to be a little bit closer together. So I'm spending a little bit of time kind of finessing them. Again, I did it twice because the second time I was like, all right, here we go. This is going to be good enough, hopefully. And then when I saw it, I was like, yep, that's good enough. So then I'm moving it over and stamping it directly with the StazOn onto the background pattern paper there. Again, that was from the Numbers scrapbook kit. So I'm going to stamp loving on the top of each one of those, and then I will be adding my journaling directly onto the page. Right, and then journaling on this one, I'm using a pen that's a Uniball Vision Elite pen. It's just one of my favorite everyday pens, and it tends to be the one that I grab when I'm doing my journaling, especially on a plain cardstock like this, because it's the one I have the most of around here, and I just have always liked the way that it writes. It's not necessarily archival in any special way, but it's just the general pen that I like to use the most. So sometimes it just depends on what I have laying on my desk, whether I grab a precision pen or a slick writer or this Vision Elite pen here too. So identified 5 things that I'm loving right now for the 5th day. That includes some new pajamas I got. That includes taking a little bit of a slower pace with decorating. Let's see what else. I'm trying to see. I got starlights for the tree this year, and hopefully the rest of those are going to arrive today. Those are the kinds of things that I'm documenting in this for day number 5. So what are things in your life that you are loving right now? They could be Christmas related, they could be seasonal, or they could just be everyday life kinds of things, right? That there's room for those kinds of stories in this project. Now, one of the new things that I picked up recently is this really cute scalloped washi tape, and I am going to end up adding it on both of the outside edges of this particular piece of pattern paper. I think you don't see me add on the second one, but I do add it on the outside as well. I thought this was really cute. This is from Doodlebug, and I'll link it for you guys below. I got it from scrapbook.com, and then I'm just using the 6-hole punch to punch right on top of it. I just liked how it felt like it was adding, it's just a little bit of something onto that background cardstock. And like I said, I'll finish that off on the other side in the end. Now, at this point in the process, I'm kind of still deciding, okay, now I'm ready to not deciding. I'm ready to adhere my half circle photo onto the back of story number 4, and I'm grabbing some of the little sticker tabs that we had in the collection this year, and I'm going to add one on the outside edge here. I will also end up adding another one on the other half circle that I have that I'm putting together right now. You'll see that later on in the process. Using rolling adhesive to add this down, add my photo directly on top, and then I'll trim up any any leftover parts. There's, like, you can see a little bit of the white right there. I love these sticker tabs just for this specific reason right here. And then I'm using my We Are Memory Keepers hole punch to punch the holes in this half circle to be able to add it directly into the album. This continues to be one of my favorite tools. I use it all the time. I use my 6-hole punch all the time too, but I love being able to have the option of the hole sizes on this punch. Definitely definitely makes me happy. So getting in there, going through the plastic, going through all those pieces. And then as I'm looking at that, I know that I'm probably going to want to add something onto the photo, but I think I come back to that later on. So I'm picking up my textured Santa transparency there, which I think turned out really fun. You could do this for any kinds of stencils. You could make your own shapes. You could paint other things on top. Of course, you could do it with just white paint if you wanted to as well, but I actually really wanted the texture that comes from the texture paste. So it has a dimension to it. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to use rolling adhesive to adhere that half circle frame. It's essentially a half circle frame on top of my textured Santas. Again, if you don't want to go through that process of, making any textured Santas or textured anything, and you might just have a transparency or a sheet of vellum in your stash, that would work great in this spot if you like this idea. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the excess around the outside edge with my scissors before moving on to the next part in the process. One of the things that I do change my mind about along the way here is I end up grabbing the black felt number 5 instead of the red vellum number 5. Just ended up, I liked the black better. I'm kind of definitely into the black, white, and red, especially for this particular day, but just in general in the album. So there I'm going in and punching the holes so that I will have this as a page for this particular story here. It's just a nice little add-in. You could obviously do this also without having the half circle if you didn't want to add in the extra work of creating the half circle. But for me, I think this year especially, or at least at this point in the process right now, I'm still having fun. I'm still having fun messing around and playing with stuff like that, feeling the joy coming from that. So that's kind of why I'm continuing on in this way. So here's the one that I printed out on Epson matte, ultra premium matte presentation paper. That's what I've been using to print out my digital supplies. And this will end up being the frame for the back side. Again, you could use pattern paper for this. You could also, before you actually trim the frame from the original half circle, you could use that as a template to print or to cut something else out. So maybe you just want to use pattern paper that you have to create that second border for the back of the half circle, or you just want, if you have access to the digital files, then you could print this one if you wanted to have the black on the back as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere that along the back. You can also see that I did add another sticker tab on there, and then I'm going to add my rolling adhesive along the edge of the outside edge to be able to adhere that down. I really think this turned out super cute. I like the white. Definitely could have done it, like I said, in a different color. If you want color for your Santas, if you want color on your texture paste, you can just mix that in, like take out a scoop of the texture paste and add a little bit of acrylic paint to it, and then you can change the color and it will still give you that nice texture. It just looks cool. Oh, I love it. So fun. Okay, so there's that black felt 5, and as I was thinking about how I wanted to put that on there, it should be no surprise that I went back to the stitching again. I love adding just a spot of red, especially just a spot of that red stitching. I just think that looks so fun on this black number, and that's going to be what is holding that number 5 in place. On the back, I'm going to cut it pretty short, and then I'm going to add a little bit of Scotch tape right on the top of it, and then I'm going to actually cover that with a star here in a minute. You'll see I'm going to grab my stash of stars and pick out a couple of little embellishments that can be both on the journaling part and then on top of the Santa transparency there. But before I do that, I looked through my canvas words there, and there's one that says, let's make a list, or making a list, I think is what it says, making a list. And I'm going to end up adding that on there because I love it for this, making my number 5 list of things that I'm loving right now. I'm also going to, before I adhere that down, I'm going to take a little bit more of the embroidery thread, that red thread, and I'm going to just do one stitch right through the top so it looks like it's stitched onto the photo. I could have done that if I would have thought that through in advance, but at that point in the process I didn't know what I would want to add on there. So it's pretty easy to just set it up like this. And I'm going to add a little bit of red line tape on the back before adhering it down directly onto the photo. And that ended up working out really well. I love those canvas word strips too. So cute. We had those last year as well. That was one of my favorite things last year. So there you go. Then we've got the 5, and then we go into that last page. The last thing I did was I have these little glass stars. I think they're glass stars from Tim Holtz that I've had in my stash for a long time. I'm going to use some tiny glue dots to glue 3 of them down. One is covering up the red piece of thread on the back side of my textured Santas. I'm going to put 2 other ones on my journaling there that will give me a nice visual triangle with those 3 small embellishments. I really love how this one came together. There's those small little glue dots. As always, you guys can let me know if you have questions in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them. And I hope that you are having a lovely December so far. And we'll be back here again tomorrow for story number 6 in December Daily 2022.